Hey, design students. Well, believe it or not, in just a couple of weeks, we are going to be almost halfway through this course, and that means it's about time for us to think about your final projects. I see that some of you are already kind of on the ball and you have begun to make your first appointment with me for your portfolio meeting. Uh, but for those of you who haven't looked at the syllabus in a few days or that hasn't been topmost on your mind, I want to take a moment and show you where you can start making your first meetings with me and show you where the handouts are that I've uploaded that explain the final project to you. So let me share my screen for a sec. Okay, so here we are in our course shell, and you'll notice that first of all, right beneath the syllabus here, I have created a folder with the two handouts for the final project. If you click the little down arrow, you'll see there's one handout for the portfolio itself and one for the design memos that you have to write as part of the portfolio, and I'll talk you through those in just a minute. Below there, please notice that here is a link to my appointment times and office hours calendars. You can click this link. It'll take you to, actually, let's do that here. We'll click the link, takes you to my appointment page, shows you all the times that I have available. Remember, I do have some appointment times on weekends, and I don't mind if you choose those. I know many of you are working full-time jobs, and maybe you don't have time for an appointment during the week. So feel free to take those weekend slots. Notice that you can click to later in the calendar at any point here by clicking on relevant weeks or clicking forward in the month. And then notice that it only lets you set up the appointments a certain amount of time out, so you can't do it for all of April yet. But that bit in the end for the last few weeks of February and the first week of March is immediately relevant to you because you need to set up your February appointment with me as indicated in the syllabus. Now, don't worry if you need to take it into the first week of March. It's no big deal, but you do need to get that appointment relatively soon because I want to be able to do two things with you pretty quickly here. Number one, I want to talk to you about the work that you've done on the discussion board so far. Again, remember those assignments are credit, no credit, because I also know that you only have a week to work on them. Maybe you could improve them if you had more time. I'm just trying to look to see, are you kind of getting the concepts that we're talking about in here? And then what could you do if you wanted to do more to them to get them ready to put in your final portfolio? The second thing is to talk about the portfolio itself. Each one of you are going to create a portfolio of at least 4 documents in this class, and all of them are going to look a little bit different because each of you have different kinds of goals and careers in mind when you leave this course. So the great thing is you get to kind of pick what your final project is. You get to pick which kinds of designs you want to put in your portfolio. And you and I will brainstorm those together when I meet you for the first time for your portfolio meeting. Then when we meet again, you're going to show me drafts of 2 of those documents. And then when we meet the final time before finals week, then you're going to show me those last 2 documents. And that way you get feedback all the way through about how you're doing, what you can do better, so that you can get your grade in the place that you would like it to be, and it won't be any mystery to you. Okay, so let me switch over now to the handouts themselves, and let me talk my way through them a little bit. And I'm going to share again. Okay, so you should see when you open up that first PDF, this is the handout that talks about the entire portfolio. And I talk a little bit in the first part of the handout about why portfolios are so important in a design class and what it does for you in terms of your employability. And on this second page, this is where the details that are going to be important to you are. By the way, if you downloaded this handout between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Wednesday, you might want to go back and download it again. Around 9 p.m., I uploaded this version that has this bulleted list of possible projects. I realized after I had already posted the first one that maybe this list would have been helpful to you. So make sure that you've got the most current version. You'll see that it has these lists of possible projects. Okay, so as you know, you need to submit 4 total projects. Some of those projects could be kind of short. So, for example, you're allowed to submit projects that are only 1 page, or even half a page, or even just as big as a social media graphic. So some of the things that could be counted there are resumes, invitations, flyers, information handouts, restaurant menus, data charts, and social media graphics, kind of like the ones that we started the course with, including quote graphics and infographics, which we'll get to later in the course. So you could have as many of 3 of those. And if you have others that fit that size and you want to propose them to me, well, that's one of the things we'll talk about in the meeting. You can tell me what kinds of projects you think you would like to work on. And by the way, you might choose those for a couple of different reasons. You might choose a project because you particularly enjoy doing that kind of thing. There's no problem with doing that. Or you might pick something because you haven't done it yet and you want to challenge yourself a little, or because you think that a potential employer might want to see a design of this kind and you want to make sure you've got one ready when you go out to do job interviews. Okay, so that's the kind of customization we're talking about here. Now, the only thing that constraint I will put on you is that out of the 4 documents, I want at least one of them to have multiple pages or screens. And by the way, notice that when we're talking about designs here, designs for print are good, designs for online are good. I don't care what you do, and you can mix and match that as much as you want. But at least one design must feature multiple pages or screens, and here are some examples. Tri-panel brochures, which you might be like, but that's only 1 sheet of paper. It is, but because of the way that you fold it, it's almost like it's 6 separate pages. Each panel is individual. If you would like to try a newsletter design, and we will work with newsletters designs a little bit later in the semester, they need to have at least 4 pages. You could, if you're a teacher, create a syllabus for a class or an assignment handout, as long as it's at least 4 pages. If any of you do work with event programs, which I do quite a bit with my work with Wildwood, if you can do one that as long as it is 8 pages or more. You could do formal reports or booklets of 8 pages or more. You could do manuals if you have them for your job, instruction manuals, training manuals, policy manuals. If you enjoy the stuff we're doing this week in class with slideshows, you could create a much bigger slideshow, say at least 12 slides, and use that for one of your projects. And of course, especially for those of you who are the web development and design majors, you are welcome to submit a website. It needs to have at least a home page and 4 additional pages. Any additional than that are icing on the cake. So those are the minimums for those multi-page or multi-screen documents. You're welcome to make them bigger if you want to, and also you're welcome to have more than one. I just want to make sure that everybody has at least one. If I were an employer and I saw somebody had taken this class, I would expect there to be at least one, if not more. Okay, if you have questions about any of those things, be sure to ask me in our portfolio meeting. Okay, so as you're picking these, think about you could take a project we've done in this class and you could revise it and turn it in as part of your final portfolio. Or if there's something that you're creating for your current job or an organization that you belong to, or even another class that you're taking, why not get double credit for that? Why not work on the design for this class? So those are all potential options for you. When you submit these projects, you're going to make sure that you have the final draft of the project. You need to have 2 alternate or early drafts of the project, and I'm going to talk about that in just a sec, and the 1 design memo, which I explain in the other handout. Okay, so let's talk about these earlier alternate drafts. Design is very rarely a one and done kind of process. It is important that you go back and re-envision or strengthen your designs after you've created them. Sometimes this happens after feedback from the client or the organization that you created the document for. Other times it's just a matter of you going back and looking and say, oh, I could have done the one thing better. And then you go and you fix it. Even if you totally love your first version of the design, I'm going to insist that you make at least one other version where you change some stuff, change the fonts, change the color scheme, make it a different size. Because if you just limit yourself to whatever that first impulse is, you might miss an idea that would actually be better, particularly when it comes to fonts and colors. So with that in mind, when you are creating stuff for the portfolio, please make sure that you save different versions. And please name your files things that you'll be able to tell, oh, yeah, this one was the first version, this one was the second version. You have to have at least two other versions besides the final. If you have more, that's okay. I don't mind. Uh, I myself, like you would laugh probably at how many different versions of things I go through. I used to do a lot of concert posters, and I would have like sometimes 15 different versions of them because uh, I didn't like how this image looked in it, or I decided the color scheme was wrong, or I showed it to the guy whose concert it was, and he was like, no, I had a totally different thing in mind. So again, having lots of different versions is normal. Storing them in a way that you can make sense of them is extremely important. And I'm going to want to see some of that process. Now, the good news is if you choose projects that you've started earlier in the semester or in upcoming weeks, then that first version that you put on the discussion board will always be the first version. But again, make sure that you're saving your versions. I can't tell you how many times I get to finals week and somebody comes to me weeping because they didn't save any of their versions and then they lose points for the assignment. Okay, again, if you have questions, ask me in our design meeting. Okay, so then I cover again the 3 times. This is the same as what I said in the syllabus about having 3 different times that we're going to meet. This first one that's coming up is to brainstorm ideas for your project. Second meeting, you show me 2. Last meeting, you show me the other 2. And you get points for attending those meetings. Now, it's really important that you come to the meetings, even if, for whatever reason, you don't have a draft of your project. You get full points for the meeting if you both show up and you have the drafts ready and you send them to me at least 3 hours in advance so that I can see them before I have to talk to you about them. I never like to get like surprised and just talk off the cuff about a design. I like to have a chance to think about it a little first. But in a worst case scenario, let's say you get behind, I would rather you come to the meeting and talk about where things are with me than not come at all. So you'll get partial credit if you come to the meeting, even if you couldn't get your drafts to me. Okay, and then in these last sections of the handout, I talk about the grading criteria. You can read that perfectly well for yourself. And then I conclude the handout with details about how to submit your portfolio to me. Notice that you have 3 different options. 1, I give you instructions if you want to send the pieces to me by email. I give you another option if you would rather give them to me by uploading them to Google Drive and sharing the Google Drive folder with me. And then third, again, for those of you who are comfortable with creating websites, you are welcome to do your whole portfolio as a website if you want to. And that, again, gives you an opportunity to show off your web design skills. Okay. With that said, I'm going to close this handout out and open up the other handout. Okay. So as I mentioned when we were discussing the previous handout, you have to write a design memo. The ability to explain your design choices is maybe one of the most important things that you'll learn from this class. Because design can be so subjective, and because just about anybody who can look at a design has an opinion about a design, you need to be able to explain why your decisions about the design are based on uh, current principles, best practices, and it's not just, oh, I thought this looked pretty. Especially because our job as the designers are to advocate for the people who are going to use the documents. And if you made a decision because it's more readable for the audience this way, it's easier for them to find the information this way, Those are the most important arguments to be able to get across. Okay. So in this handout, I give you detailed instructions about what needs to be included in this design memo. And I recommend that wherever you use your portfolio items after this class, that you make sure to include the design memos with them, because sometimes people think, looking at one of your designs, well, that wasn't that hard, especially if it's like only a one-page design or if it's just a social media graphic. People are like, well, that probably took half an hour. And you put in hours of blood, sweat, and tears into that thing. Your design memo makes it possible for them to understand the work that went into it. Plus, it makes it possible for them to understand what you were trying to do. Who was this for? What were you trying to accomplish? Why did you do the things that you did when you designed it? Okay. I'm calling these design memos because I do not want them to be like double-spaced reports. I want them to look like memos. I want them to have to, from, subject, date at the top of them. I want you to use very crisp professional language. I do not want you to use giant words if those are things that would never come out of your mouth. I want you to talk to me using the vocabulary of the class, so you definitely should talk about things like contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity, emphasis, balance, all the kinds of things that we're talking about. But I don't want this to sound overly formal and academic. You are welcome to use I. You are welcome to address me as you. You get the drift here. I have laid out for you exactly how I want you to organize it. And exactly what I want you to include in each section. So if you want to do well on this section, follow the instructions. So in here, the first section of your memo should be introduction and purpose. And here are the bullet points of things you ought to cover in there. Second, describe to me the users or the readers of the design that you've created. Third, if you are designing this for a client, by that I mean, so let's say, for example, that what you're trying to do is persuade people to buy tickets to an event. The people who are buying the tickets are your users or readers. The organization who's hosting the event is your client. And the interests of those two groups sometimes compete with each other, right? Sometimes the organization has things that it's concerned about conveying, and those don't necessarily make it easy for the users to find it. So you as the designer are trying to negotiate those two things. And again, you and I can talk about those in our portfolio meeting to make sure you understand for sure who the readers are versus who the client is. Okay, then I'm going to ask you to tell me a little about the context or the design constraints. And this means tell me about the situation that's involved, because every document is created for a situation, or every design is created for a particular situation. And you may have a crazy employer, for example. Like I had a student a few years ago who literally came to me and said, I had the color scheme for my manual all planned out. And then my employer came to me and he says, I had a dream that it should be these totally other colors. And I'm like, what, a dream? It's what the client wanted. So you may have reasons that force you to do things in the document that you yourself might not prefer to do. If so, this is the place to explain them. Again, it's great for you to talk about these things because it shows how you work around a design challenge, how you work around not being able to do exactly what you want all the time for reasons you don't control. So don't be concerned about it, just talk about it. Okay, and then having given me that context, this section is probably the most important part, the design rationale. This is where you're going to spell out to me what your reasons were for the design. You're going to talk to me about if this is going to be printed, what kind of paper is it going to be on and why? Are you going to put this online or are you going to put it in print and why? What size is it going to be? What are the colors going to be? Tell me about your typography choices. For every single design decision, there needs to be a reason that is grounded in stuff from our textbook or stuff from the articles that we've read online. So make sure you're able to justify your decisions. Then in the second to last section, you're going to talk about the design evolution. This is where you're going to tell me Here's what I produced in the earlier drafts, and here's how it changed when I got to the final version, and why did that happen. And then finally, I'll have you conclude by writing what I call a design assessment, which is tell me what the main things were that you learned from working on that project. And would you change anything if you had more time? Because let's face it, we would all change things if we had more time, but we don't have infinite time. And that's okay as long as you indicate, I know I still need to do X, Y, and Z, and I would do those things, if I had just an extra week or an extra month or whatever it would take to do that. Okay. Last but not least, in the tips for writing effective memos, please, please do not wait until the week before the portfolio is due to write your memos. These memos actually take way more time than people expect. By the way, they are usually quite a bit more than one page. They're frequently 3 pages or so. So be prepared for that. I recommend in here that you start taking notes from the time that you start the design, and that you save those notes with notes about what you changed in each version, so that when you get ready to finish the design, it's very easy for you to write that stuff up. It will be hard sometimes for you to remember if you don't write the stuff down. So please, pretty please, work on your design memos early, and if you want to, you can even show me drafts of your design memos in your portfolio meetings with me. Not this first one, obviously, because we're just making up the projects in the first one, but in the second and the third one, if you want to bring some design memo drafts, please do. Okay, I hope you find this information helpful. As always, if you have any questions for me, you can drop me an email at kmkuralt@ualr.edu or shoot me a text message, or you do not have to wait for your design meetings to get on my calendar and set up a time. Several of you have taken advantage of this already this semester. I'm very proud of you for doing that. And I want to encourage the rest of you that anytime you want to talk to me about a weekly assignment, something for your portfolio, a technology that you're working with, you can always get on the appointment calendar anytime, find out when I have times available, and sign up for a time to chat with me. Okay, I'm excited to meet with you about these portfolios, and I will see you online soon. Bye, y'all.